interviewing. You know, that's what they doing. Stick around. It's about to get all roomy up in here. Remote Ruby starts now.
What's up, Andrew?
Chris, how's it going?
It's good. You were just before we recorded saying how great of a week you're having. And I was like, dude, it's only Tuesday.
Yeah, it is not Tuesday for those listening. Thank God. I wouldn't make it. Yeah, long week. I'm coming off the tail end of a project and it was...
You have a tailwind?
Not actually tailwind, but yeah, long week.
Yeah.
Long life. Jesus.
Yeah. Our son slept, or he went 7 hours not sleeping the whole time between feedings, at least for like the first time ever. So I'm like getting some sleep actually at night. It's life-changing. It's kind of amazing.
Unrelated to that, but related because you made me think of this. Has Brooke seen Grey's Anatomy? Dude, I need to talk about Grey's Anatomy with someone.
I don't know if she has or not.
Okay, well.
I have not.
Yeah, I figured. I'm in love with Grey's Anatomy right now. Don't ask why. It's just what I'm doing.
All right. Well, today we have a couple special guests. We've got Ryan and Brendan here from the Rails Business Podcast, which you might know them from. You guys want to introduce yourselves? Brendan, you unmuted first, so you get to start.
I win the race. Perfect. Yeah, I'm Brendan Buckingham. I've been doing the Rails Business Podcast with Ryan, almost a year, right, Ryan, I think? And yeah, I've been doing Ruby and Rails and all that stuff. Well, 2013, I guess, is when I got my first job doing it. So it's been quite a while, but I've been following along with DHH and the Rails story, I guess, since it kind of started. Well, at least when I noticed it in like the early or late aughts, I guess. So I don't need to go into probably too much more. I don't want to bore people too much, but thanks for having us on. Ryan, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, my name's Ryan Frisch. I'm the CTO at Locable, which is a marketing platform for local chambers of commerce, Main Street associations, magazines, newspapers, with the goal of helping all of those organizations work together to promote each other. Been doing that since about 2012 and Rails since a couple years after that. Before that, I did sort of WordPress and long backstory. I used to work in finance and get out of that. So I think that was a good thing for my own health, but love what I do and been happy to sort of co-host the Rails Business Podcast with Brendan. And I can't believe it's almost been a year at this point. That's exciting. We'll have to celebrate that.
Yeah, right.
Time flies. You said you did Rails a couple years after Locable started. Is that right?
Yeah.
Is it not always on Rails?
The quick backstory is I left finance just because I was burnt out in doing it. And I moved to Florida on a whim. I was in Boston. I moved to Florida and just started freelancing, doing marketing. All right. So I got into HubSpot and, content marketing and doing that whole thing. And I picked up a couple clients, but mostly I was screwing around down there. But I met my current business partner at Locable. And when I joined the company, I joined as a marketing/support person. We outsourced all our development. At that point, my development experience, I have a degree in IT. I went into finance after that, but then I always dabbled with WordPress, PHP, themes, all of that fun stuff. And after a while at Locable, we realized we can't move as fast as we want because of budget constraints, because of whatever with outsourcing development. I'd always shown an interest in it. So I just dove in, taught myself Rails. I watched all the screencasts, so thank you for that. And, over time, I just started opening the app. I fixed a bug and was like, oh, I think I can actually do that. And then at some point, I don't remember the exact timeline, but I stopped doing marketing. We hired someone to do customer success and support to take that over from me. And I became the full-time developer. And that's just sort of grown over the years. So yeah, that was the quick version.
So the team that you had outsourced to, they built it initially in Rails?
Yeah. So when I joined the company, they already had a Rails app. And that was the introduction for me, right? I didn't know too much about it, but dove in and immediately clicked, right? Like PHP, I always felt like I was banging my head against the wall. That was probably before Laravel became popular. So like maybe it would be different with the framework, but I was like dropping down and doing database connections and things that I didn't care about. But at the time, I always had this notion that I had to understand every little piece. And if I couldn't wrap my head around it, then I couldn't move forward. And while that's no different in Rails, they do a better job at hiding it maybe, where you can just be comfortable with it out of the box. I don't know what it was that clicked, but it did. And here we are.
I had started in Basic and .NET, and then on the web, like WordPress, and same thing. It was like I could find the search results term in the PHP and like see how it was work backwards to see where it was querying and how it displayed the results or whatever. But like never felt like there was more of an architecture there of this is designed this way on purpose. That felt special about Rails, where it was like, oh, things have a home and I just put them there and I don't have to like make those decisions all the time. That was helpful for me a lot.
Especially when you're just starting out, being told what to do and have it just make a little bit of sense. That doesn't mean you can't deviate from it later as you gain experience. But yeah, that was a hurdle that I spent years trying to get over, that first hurdle from PHP to something. And then I discovered Rails and was like, okay, I can be productive. Now I'm at a different hurdle at this point in my career, but you never really stop learning, but it feels natural.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's always different stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I was there too with PHP. Like I've told this story on our podcast, but I don't think I've gone into all the detail about, I was in a secondhand bookshop. My brother was writing PHP. So there was like a PHP book on the shelf. And I'm like, I'm interested in coding. I'd already been doing like Visual Basic at work to automate my spreadsheets. And I was like, I like the coding thing. Let's do PHP. And then when I started hearing about Rails, I kept putting it off because I kept hearing like, oh, you need to know programming before you know Rails, understanding what it's doing underneath. So I basically forced myself to like actually build an app that of course was never released, but in PHP. So I know all this stuff you guys were talking about, except I never did it in anger in a way that I released it. It was just like, now I know this part sucks. Okay, Rails is great because it's all, well, not all of it, but a lot of it's obfuscated and hidden in the places where we don't need to do anything, you know, if it's not urgent or whatever. But to even tie this back to Grey's Anatomy, I think that's about when Grey's Anatomy came out, when I found that PHP book. And to fully tie that off, I actually walked by Katherine Heigl in Pittsburgh, where I was at the time. She was like filming some movie. I don't know which one, but yeah, she walked down the street past my wife and I. We both kind of looked at each other like, was that Katherine Heigl? And then we're like, oh yeah, she's filming like just down the road. So there's your Grey's Anatomy connection, Andrew.
Sweet. I'm happy.
That's amazing. When you guys first heard about Rails, was part of it, you know, Rails started in a very entrepreneurial place, coming from being extracted from Basecamp. But like, I think I heard of Rails through like Hacker News, and the startups at the time and whatever were all kind of like, Rails was the thing. That's what you use to build your product. I was just curious if that's what caught your attention a bit.
For me, I feel like a lot of the places I was hearing about it maybe don't even exist anymore. I don't even remember all the names, but I remember there was a lot of PHP versus Rails arguments going on. And because I was just starting out looking at PHP stuff, I feel like I kept seeing that a lot. And that's kind of what got Rails on my radar. I don't think it was necessarily Hacker News, but for me too, I guess even to step back a little bit further before PHP, it took me a while to actually decide I want to do programming at all. I mentioned the VBA stuff. That was more fun than the spreadsheets at work. I was still very resistant to even, I don't know if I can program. I don't really know. Like I can go to, I think Weebly was one of those things at the time where you could build a website. And again, my brother was already programming. And I remember him being like, dude, it'd be so much better if you would just learn to program. And I built maybe some small toy app in that too. And was like, I definitely could feel the need for something more. Besides kind of that conversation, I kept feeling like I saw, I don't remember a whole lot about where it was, but it was definitely a thing at the time.
Yeah, I'll add, Rails was kind of forced on me from a decision that somebody else made before I got going. But that said, I think the whole startup thing for me didn't even really become apparent until the last 5 or 6 years when you started to hear like the storyline of, oh, Rails can scale. You've got Shopify, you've got GitHub, right? Like it's become, I think, more recently, even more startup-y, right? Maybe I was just oblivious before. It never really entered my mind. It was just, hey, I'm looking for a better language or whatever it is going to take to get over the hump. And if anything, create a blog and 15-minute video probably had a higher influence than anything else, just because, oh, if he could do it in 15 minutes, I could do it in a week, maybe, right? Like I certainly wasn't going to do it in 15 minutes, but it was still like, wow, that's cool, right? That got me more interested than say how other startups are using it.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe my eyes were just not open yet.
Honeybadger is a performance monitoring and error tracking tool that combines the best monitoring features in one simple interface, with support for all the frameworks you use. It's everything you need to gain real-time insights into the health of your applications. Be sure to bookmark honeybadger.io. That's www.honeybadger.io. I was in a similar boat. At the beginning, you're just like, I don't even know if I can build anything and finish it. And then you start to realize, like, I think I could do it. It might just take me 6 months, but eventually I'll probably figure it out. And you like slowly build your confidence.
It's just so different coming from, I think before PHP, I was using ASP.NET or C#. I mean, it's just such a different feel, different style of coding. We call ourselves, software developers or engineers, whatever label you want to use it, but we're really like product creators. I feel like that's a better label for Rails developers. Like we like to build things. The technology makes it efficient and faster, and you can ship quicker, and that's obviously great, especially for business. But the rest of it, I don't identify necessarily as a software developer. That's like what I tell people because that's what people understand. But I'm a builder. I like to create out of nothing.
That reminds me of DHH's keynote in, was it the 2014 RailsConf in Chicago? I think it was. The only one I actually got to go to. And I think he started calling us software writers or something like that, which I think kind of jives with what you're saying there, Ryan.
Yeah.
I also remembered too that around the same time that I was kind of finding out about Rails, I think I knew at least enough about it, or I'd been paying attention to it. Maybe I'd even started messing around with it. I remember I was watching a lot of Jason Calacanis's This Week in Startup show. I don't even know if he still does that, to be honest. It's been a long time. But I remember DHH came on, and that was like a super interesting episode at the time because it was like Jason was on one side of, VC-backed companies and all that kind of stuff was hot. And then DHH was on the complete other side, and it was a very interesting argument at the time. You could argue it wasn't even all about Rails, but he's the creator of Rails and it was still pretty new-ish. So it was pretty interesting.
Apparently, he's still doing This Week in Startups episode 2208.
Wow.
That just came out November 12th. That's insane.
That's a lot.
I remember watching Jason and DHH on there a long time ago, and it was just so interesting to hear. For whatever reason, there's Jason Fried and DHH tend to have kind of opposite advice than most everything else that you hear about business and software and things. And I just remember that catching my attention and being like, oh, this is different. Something about the way they think about this stuff. They're not just absorbing everybody else talking about how to build software. They're like trying to do their best to come up with their first principles and do it their way. I remember Jason Fried, and I think he talked about this recently on the Rework podcast, but like they talked about Basecamp Classic and Basecamp 2 and Basecamp 3, which is now 4. They're like, you know what? Porsche makes the 911. Every generation is different. They like don't share anything at all. They'll start completely from scratch, but there's still an essence of it being a 911. It's obviously the same car, but they've not shared anything from before. And like, you could do that with software and it's okay to do that. But like at the time, everybody was like, yeah, never do that. And yet you would see things like Facebook would redesign their entire UI and force it on people, and they'd freak out and leave and whatever. But then they'd change the psychology of it. So the next time they did that was like, hey, you can opt in to try out the new user interface, and just giving people the option to like, I want to be the cool new kid before everybody else. That just little change was basically the same thing, but in effect made people happy or whatever. And it was at that time where I was realizing like, oh, this is really interesting to see how much psychology and stuff goes into writing good software. And it's not just about making it work. It's about how do you make it feel natural and whatever in people's hands. That definitely caught my attention back in the day of they just seem to be thinking about things differently. And maybe that's part of the essence of Rails, that like all the terminology of active record and the routing DSL and controllers and whatever, like just active support in general, just so fluid to you as a human being thinking in English and trying to convince the computer to like follow the rules you're setting up for it. Maybe that was the magic sauce or whatever for it. For me, that was an influential time, I feel like.
Totally, yeah. It also makes me think of just all the books that they've written that are not even about Rails, right? It's all about 37 Signals or Basecamp, whichever company they're going by or whatever name they're going by at the time. But they had Getting Started or Getting Real, I guess it was. I remember reading that online around the same time. And a lot of the philosophy you were just kind of talking about, like it's built into Rails. You can kind of see it, especially early Rails. It was like a different way of thinking about things, and it kind of gelled with the way they were building software. I think I even was able to sign up. I don't think they do this anymore, but I think Basecamp had free versions.
It's free.
So I think I remember. Is it free again? Okay. I'll have to check it out.
I highly recommend the Rework podcast. I'm down a big rabbit hole on that. But they just announced that they're going back to the free Basecamp version. They said they've gone back and forth like 3 or 4 times over the course of its history. So I find that fascinating.
I was just going to say, I think I've got like 3 different Basecamp 1, I think it is, accounts still. And then I even remember when they had Basecamp Personal, I think is what they called it. And I tried setting that up for like my wife because we had just had our second kid. And I was like, hey, we can like keep track of the kid did this and they said this and they all this stuff. And my wife just looked at me and was like, no, we're not doing that.
That could be a whole nother topic, but you reminded me of something that I was thinking as I was listening to the episode about them switching to free, and a question, Chris, that I wanted to pose to you about, I know you do a lot of work with Stripe.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I hear about an app making a pricing change, I always think of the same question. If you're using Stripe subscriptions or Stripe products or any kind of Stripe API integration to handle your payments, how do you sort of maintain data integrity between the Stripe dashboard and the data they have in your app, right? I think you've tiptoed around that subject in the past on past episodes.
What happens when a developer decides to record his own podcast ad? Let's find out. I'm Adam from JudoScale, and at JudoScale, there's no marketing team, no salespeople, and no customer support. I mean, we do have customer support, but it's just us, the developers. That's why our support is top-notch. Anyway, we're JudoScale. We're the autoscaler that actually works. We do it better than anyone else by tracking the right metrics and checking those metrics more frequently. And we wrap it all in a beautiful UI with powerful and intuitive controls. We work with hosting platforms like Heroku, Render, and Amazon ECS to gracefully handle your traffic spikes and backed up job queues. If you want that peace of mind and a much lower hosting bill, you should check us out. Visit judoscale.com/remote Ruby for your special gift as a remote Ruby listener. That's judoscale.com/remote Ruby.
It literally just happened again. Breaking change, and I updated pay for Stripe version 17, which updated the API, which then has changed. They have the concept of discounts, but discounts can also have coupons. The idea of a discount, that's just like the rules of like, it's 50% off or whatever, but a coupon can be customer facing. Mm-hmm. So those are like, use remote Ruby at checkout or whatever. The API just changed so that like apparently they're going to introduce more stuff. So when you have like an invoice, I'm just trying to recreate Stripe's invoice like layout. So you display the discounts and whatever, but you have to like go to the invoice, then go to the line item, then go to the discount, then go to like the discount source now, which used to just be the coupon directly. And you have to jump through all these different things. And what we ended up doing in Pay not that long ago was like, just take the Stripe object that the API gives us and just save it in our database, like the whole thing. But unfortunately, when they change their stuff, that breaks your code potentially. So our code that was displaying the coupon in the invoice or the receipt, that like blew up because it's no longer there. It's moved to a different location. So what I ended up doing is like we could do some backwards compatible stuff, like default to trying the new way of doing things, then fall back to the old API format. Or I imagine we could probably save like the API version in that raw JSON or something, so we could like check that. But the other thing that I don't have millions and millions of records, so I just went and updated all of them in our database and updated the copy after I changed the code. So yeah, I don't have a great, like initially my strategy was we wanted to support Stripe and Braintree because Stripe didn't support PayPal. So I needed Braintree for that because PayPal directly was horrible. Still is, but now they're one company. PayPal owns Braintree. And so I tried to like take these APIs and like only care about the stuff we need and normalize them in some way so that it was like, or standardize them so that they were somewhat consistent. And that works fine until you add Paddle and Lemon Squeezy, and Paddle Classic and Paddle Billing are different. And so I kind of gave up on that over time and was like, it's probably safer if we just save the raw Stripe stuff.
Yeah.
And allow you, because the other problem with that was like, okay, they do not function the same way. You cannot create customer through the API with Paddle. You have to do it through JavaScript. So that's weird, but everybody else allows you to do that on the back end. So I don't know what the right answer there is. That's what I've settled on today, but
you went in a slightly different direction than I was thinking, right? And managing the API versioning and the constant
but in your
change
application
is like a challenge. But what if the example that I always think of is like a user logs into their Stripe dashboard and changes the price of a product, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now the price of the product in Stripe is different potentially as the price that I have saved in my app.
Yeah.
And those things cause like real customer facing concerns, right? Because they're like, oh, your data is like, you're charging the wrong thing. I'm like, well, yes, I suppose that's true, but you went and changed it at the source instead of through the app, right? So
yeah.
I think at one point you suggested that before you ever do a charge or whatever it is in Stripe, you always go and sort of make the API call and pull in the latest product info, which, you know, at face value, if I understood it correctly, isn't the worst thing, but that could be a real performance bottleneck, right? Like,
yeah,
API call. So like, I don't know if you have any tips on that front, or again, you just sort of...
Stripe's got a lot of webhooks these days that you could use for things like that, which is what I would do. But not all, like Braintree doesn't have... Braintree has an insanely incomplete set of webhooks. So yeah, effectively that's what we do for everything now. And I don't remember when I would have used the other approach. But yeah, like webhooks are... Here's an example of something that is related, sort of. If you change something in Stripe, you need to be able to sync it to your database. So ideally, yeah, price changes, you listen to the webhook and pull it into your app. That can be delayed. The webhooks may not come through right
there's
away.
A race condition there.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't show up often, but it's not impossible.
So not necessarily for that example does this
you
work.
You could still use that
like,
example because you just put it, we process them in the background.
So the example that comes to mind that'll show this off really well is like when you send somebody to Stripe to check out, they will check out, but the webhooks may come in 15 seconds later or something. And you need to be able to actually have that record in the database before then, so that they check out and they come back to your site and they're actually subscribed. If you have to wait, they'll check out, pay for your product, and then be redirected, and it'll look like they're still not subscribed, even though they just put in their credit card and it said it was successful. So what we do in like Pay now is you go to Stripe checkout, and then on the redirect back, we sync the record from the API. So checkout will give you like the checkout session ID, and we'll, in our controller, you redirect back, and then we sync it immediately before we redirect you to like the thank you page. So it doesn't matter if there are webhooks at all in development now, it'll automatically sync that as part of the process. And it's like maybe a little bit slower in that case, just because the redirect is going to have to hit the API like we were talking about earlier.
Maybe that's what I was thinking
But it ensures that kind of situation is safe. And then the webhooks can come in out of order, which is the other problem. And Stripe is working on some new version of their API to try to solve that. And they're also getting rid of the data in the API or the webhook messages. So when they send you that something happened, ideally, they don't send you the data, because that can also be out of date, because you can get a checkout was successful before it was refunded, or you might get the refund before the checkout was successful for whatever reason. And so you might accidentally save the wrong data. So the way you're supposed to do it is you receive the webhook, you just go ask the API for the current version of the data always. So you always know it's up to date, and it's way trickier than you would expect it to be.
But that is really helpful to create a mental model of like, another thing I heard you say several times is like, get the webhook, just store it immediately, respond 200 OK as quickly as possible. Then take that
because if
ID, go get the real data, then sync, right?
That is super helpful, because if your code is wrong or has a bug, then the webhook doesn't, the webhook can retry, but you can retry within your background jobs really easily. And then you have control over that. So you can decide when that gets deleted or whatever. And like, that's a good example that Action Mailbox in Rails does. It receives an email, saves it in the database, then queues up a job, then it processes it. And if the processing fails, it just retries it later on. And then when it's successful, it'll create an incinerate job for later on. And so it doesn't even have to delete it immediately. It could delete it like 30 days later, 30 minutes later, whatever you want. So yeah, that's another thing is like, it's Black Friday, you're going to get a crap load of webhooks. So that's one of the ways, rather than relying on the webhook HTTP processing, you don't want to delay that too much. If you're getting thousands of webhooks, if you can just shove it in the database and return a 200 OK, then you have control over processing it later, and you take off burden from your web servers, move it to your background workers instead, and that can help with that. So, but luckily, you're in a good spot if you're dealing with that many, webhooks over Black Friday.
Yeah, good problem to have for sure. But now I'm iterating to try to improve.
Yeah. One thing you can also do is, I've done this different ways, but whenever you get returned from Stripe checkout back to your application, you have it on like a spinning page or some type of indication like, hey,
like a single page app, like William Kennedy's famous blog post.
Yeah, like a loader or something that's like basically saying, hey, we're doing something right now. And then when we're done processing everything in the background, we have like, I'm pretty sure we're using Stimulus or something to basically like ping a route to say, hey, is this data ready? Is this data ready? And whenever it's ready, they move them off of that processing screen to like their completed page.
That makes sense when it's when there's more processing than when there's going to be a delay.
If the API request is going to be pretty quick, or it's like whatever, 100 milliseconds or something, then you could probably just let that page wait a little bit, because Stripe actually cheats it a little bit for you, because when you click pay, the spinner happens and then the redirect happens, and like you don't necessarily see the next page right away. So you're still kind of on the Stripe checkout and see that it's processing. But if it does immediately redirect you, then like totally makes sense. And that waiting sort of polling wait page is pretty cool too, because you could probably set that up with if you have a record, I don't know, like a subscription or something, and you're on a page where you could set up a turbo stream from, you could have your turbo broadcast on the back end say, hey, it's ready now. And then that page could automatically do whatever it needs to and send you onwards. So that would be kind of a slick way to handle that without a lot of extra client-side JavaScript.
Yeah,
So is this all built into?
My app is turbo ready. Which it's not yet. Working on it, but haven't gotten there.
What's it in right now?
We just finished getting to Rails 7.2 about 4 months ago. We were on 4.2. It took us about a year to get up to 7.2. So we're now like current, but I had to turn turbo off to get
Sure.
moving it. We use jQuery. That was primarily what it does. There's still some CoffeeScript from back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
We've introduced Stimulus. So like all new JavaScript, I try to use Stimulus now. And it's just going to be a process. We got to there's a lot of inline JavaScript. So that's got to be moved into the head. Ideally, I deprecate jQuery at some future point so that I can also upgrade Bootstrap or move to Tailwind or whatever I choose to do in the future. But those are all like massive changes that are going to touch like every file in the app. And I just have to be patient. I desperately want to use turbo streams and turbo frames and all that stuff. But I'm sort of stuck in UJX land for now, or the old way of doing it. I said they're both kind of UJX under the hood. But it's unfortunate because the UI improvement is so great with the turbo stuff. And
I mean, it sounds like you're doing the right thing. Like new stuff, write it in a hotwire compatible way and slowly go back through and replace things. Like what's nice is, say you have a server rendered JavaScript response. Those were usually like inject this HTML, update this thing, whatever. Those are turbo stream responses, which are pretty easy to do or whatever. One trick you might do is be able to pull in turbo, but turn off turbo drive. So you could use turbo streams and that sort of thing without fully taking over the navigation, which would be probably very painful because all your JavaScript would need to listen to turbo load events maybe, but
I didn't actually realize that was a possibility. So now I'm going to have to go hack on it later today and see. It really is just the navigation.
Right.
It actually works out that I didn't upgrade in between to all the different JavaScript-y things along the way because it's more compatible with the old version than it is the intermediary version. So that is actually a positive that I was behind on that one.
Right. That's like when you skip Webpacker or whatever, and you're like, I didn't have to go to that. I didn't have to switch to ES Build and blah, 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 like, or V.
Never did any of that. And sometimes I worry that I didn't learn what I needed to learn through that experience, but you guys are all
now it's no build,
like I'm crazy. So
as a survivor from that period, I guarantee you the only thing you didn't learn is immense stress.
I'm happy with that outcome.
I survived the Webpacker era.
It should be a t-shirt.
Yeah.
Should. Yeah, the gray hairs. You've made a lot of them through those years.
Well,
Brendan, you were going to say something?
I was just going to ask. I just purchased Jumpstart Pro yesterday for a new project. So you got it all figured out there, right? Yeah, well, of course. But you've got it all figured out there, right? So like everything you just listed, I can forget and it's just done for me.
Yeah, pretty much.
I'm slightly joking, but I'm kind of curious too.
Like if you change the price in Stripe, we don't sync those, but we could. There's some things that are still a little bit like compatibility with Braintree and Paddle and whatever. So when you set up a price in the back end, it's kind of like, what's the ID in Braintree? What's the ID in Stripe? What's the ID here or there? But if we were to get to a point where like it's just Stripe, because Stripe now has a merchant of record in beta, so there's really no need for us to also support everything else. Aside from actually accepting PayPal, which they do in Europe, but not in the US. But with all the other local payment methods they offer now, like you don't really need it anymore. So maybe eventually we'll drop everything but Stripe and just have like a really tight integration with them. But for the most part, yeah, we've like done all that. A lot of the pay stuff, pay was extracted from Jumpstart. So every little weird nuance and annoying thing that I ran into is just like, all right, we'll pull it out and put it in pay. So the nice part is like, yeah, if you use pay, if you want to just redirect to Stripe for the billing portal and checkout and not have a built-in UI for it, then pay will work really quickly. But if you want a bit more of your own UI, which is what I wanted, it was like a billing page which shows your subscriptions and your invoices and receipts, and the ability for us to like let you change what's on an invoice, because sometimes people will forget to put in their business address or something and then ask you for that, but Stripe won't let you edit the invoices. So I was like, well, we need our own PDF generation for that. And so that's all built into Jumpstart to make that easier for you and whatnot.
So you're doing that all on the app side and foregoing Stripe checkout?
We use Stripe checkout embedded. We were like a beta tester of that. So originally was before SEA, you could just drop your credit card form in and it was super smooth and easy. And then SEA ruined the simplicity of everything. And we had tried to use, they even announced their payment element and their shipping and address elements. So you could still do like a custom UI, but Stripe checkout would be able to like give it a subscription and you could put in your billing address and then it would automatically update the price on the side with taxes and everything. But the APIs they exposed to us as customers didn't let you do that without like separate pages or like re-rendering the whole thing. So now Stripe checkout can just be embedded, which is much, much simpler. And it's way easier to just drop it in. You get all their UI, any of the changes or new features they add, just boom, right there, automatically, like upsells and whatever else you might want to do. So for example, like you go to check out for GoRails for a monthly subscription, you can tell in Stripe's dashboard, the monthly plan can be upsold to the annual plan. So there will be like just a little toggle. You can say, would you rather save 30% and go to the annual plan? Yes, I would. And that'll just do it automatically. Yeah, that stuff, it can be a lot to build, you know? So yeah, we use checkout for that just because there's too many. I mean, there's Bitcoin, there's like 50 different payment methods or more these days because Stripe supports pretty much every country and all their vouchers in Mexico where you go down to the bodega and you pay money there and you can use that online. They support that stuff. And I'm like, I'm not going to go build a custom thing to handle that myself, but I would love to support it. So it seems like the best balance of like, it's still in your app. You're not being redirected to Stripe or whatever, but you can do that too.
How do you allow people to change an invoice? I know you can't change the invoice in Stripe, but you just said you can do it and you're set up. So how does that actually interact?
We have our own PDF rendering thing. So we use Prawn to generate an invoice or a receipt and plug in like, this is your company details. This is the customer's details, the line items, the tax total, subtotal, yada, yada.
But you're keeping that all in your app, right? Like it's not being synced over to Stripe.
So there's no Stripe invoice. It's just that you use the checkout for the payment piece of it, but
Stripe still makes the invoice automatically on their end for the subscription, but then we save that in our database and then use that copy to render a PDF locally.
We do the same thing.
You sort of have to, right? Because like people, it's like the number one request that we get is like, oh, I need to edit this invoice. I'm like, you can't. You can void it, right?
Yeah.
But again, but that's not a great user experience for the customer or their customer for that matter.
Yeah. And I know that certain countries or whatever, like Germany, don't allow that legally or whatever. So I assume that's kind of why they don't allow that. But it's such a important thing because you'll get your German customers that are like, we need our address and our whatever ID on there. And you're like, okay, well, I guess I have to like, if you're going to do it manually, you open up Google Docs or something, just do one from scratch. But it's much better if you can do it in your app and let them change that over time or whatever. So,
Do you ever do any reconciliation from like Stripe, I guess like payment reports to like line items for your accountant? Do you ever run into that? Because we get that request all the time. It's like, how do I make this process easier?
Yeah, I don't have to do any of that, thankfully, but you can use their balance transaction API to pull because the balance transaction object is like the actual sort of accounting thing that underlies all the charges, the refunds, the Stripe fees, the whatever else. So that would be the thing to look at. And like, you could probably, I'm sure there's a webhook for that or whatever, because you can pull in those and it will give you, here, the list of types: adjustment, advance funding, anticipation repayment, application fee, charge, climate order purchase. Literally every single individual accounting transaction there.
Grab that,
you could
put
probably
it in the CSV, let them download it.
Yep.
Have at it.
Yeah, I think that would probably be what you would want for that, because then a lot of those things probably don't show up. Like if you're not doing the climate donations or whatever during checkout,
the challenge
won't
is
see those.
That they'll see a lump sum payment into their bank account, say $10,000, and they need to know that was actually 5 $2,000 transactions. That $2,000 was really like $1,900 in product and $100 in taxes. I'm greatly simplifying this example, but
and even you do those, like I think I have mine set up to do daily or something, but if it clears it daily, then you get a refund like 60 days later or something. Then it's that money doesn't line up immediately in the same place. Yeah, those are probably the place to look for that. And like, I don't think that used to be. It still is kind of hidden in their API, like it's mentioned there, but until you get into like reconciling and probably looking at specific docs for that, that's just something hidden away for you.
I love Stripe, and their documentation is maybe some of the best out there, but it is still super confusing, right? Especially with the different versions. Where like I'm still unclear of, I know things change from like charge to payment intent along the way, but the problem is you still have, when you go look at the docs, like they still have all the old docs out there. So it's hard to know what is the new best way, other than listening to your podcast and hearing you talk about all the beta testing you're doing. It's sort of, I know you also have a Slack channel that's really,
they're pretty good in their Discord or whatever.
Discord or Slack. I can't remember which one it's on.
Yeah. It's still just like so complicated because, payments are pretty complicated, but like, as a small business owner, that's the last thing you want to deal with and whatever. Like for us, I'm lucky that like Missouri doesn't really have too many sales tax laws for digital stuff yet, but they will. The second that we get in that position, we're like, okay, laws are changing, whatever. The merchant of record is probably a really good option for any small business, because it's basically like, you don't deal with taxes. Like Stripe does all the tax stuff. The weird part is like the customer is Stripe's customer. So when they ask for a refund, like Stripe decides that. And I'm not 100% sure. Like typically I'm just going to give you a refund no matter what if you ask. I don't want to fight anybody over that. And usually it's a mistake. Like, I forgot to cancel my subscription and it just renewed and I missed it. Cool. No problem. See ya. Yeah. But that stuff is like stressful, because if you turn on Stripe Tax, you're like, there's how many countries? And if I have one transaction in this country, I have to like sign up for a tax ID and start remitting payments and whatever. And like, no way. And like most of the time, it's going to be 99% of them are $0 filings that you have to do. But the one purchase you have, in theory, makes it so you have to pay sales tax there and register and whatever. And I'm like, oh God.
We use Stripe Connect, and one of our customers, was setting that up, and Stripe now has a new in-app guide that I didn't know about, but they prompt you to set up the tax stuff. And this person was just blindly following it and like got real down into the weeds. And I'm like, yeah, you don't need to do anything. Just disable taxes. You're fine. Go. Like, it's not necessary for our integration. Yes, you are legally responsible for this, but like for a small business, most of the time it's built into the price and they just pay the tax, right?
Right.
if you want to
And
get
it-
into it, you can. But they were getting so frustrated. I was like, I didn't ask you to all this complicated tax stuff. You chose to do that.
It's one thing where you're like, if you have a physical location, you're in this zip code. So you know that you pay the state sales tax and the zip code sales tax. And like, it's just one number and it's set. But when you're online, it's like, well, is your customer also in Missouri? Where are you in Missouri? Where are they in Missouri? And like, just gets to be super messy, super fast. You see that with all of Stripe's APIs. Like now you've got, especially for Connect, there's so many different, are you responsible for refunds? Do customers interact with you as the business or your Connect businesses? And like, are you Etsy or are you Shopify? Shopify, nobody, aside from maybe seeing Shop Pay, you feel like you're checking out with the Shopify merchant. But if you're on Etsy, you're paying Etsy. And that's totally different. And yeah, lots of complexities with it all, but
I've been dying to
it's
ask you that
improving.
question for probably 4 or 5 months now. So thank you for.
Well, you can always
Yes,
email me, so
well,
you
yeah.
don't have to wait 4 months.
I wanted everyone to hear the response because I feel like if I was thinking it during one of your podcasts, right, that other people are probably having the same conversation. So it was okay to wait in this instance. So
Good.
I'm sure I'll take you up on that at some point.
I would be curious to hear too, like if you turn on Turbo Drive in your app or turn off Turbo Drive, what JavaScript stuff from jQuery you can swap out with TurboStream or whatever. It'll be interesting.
That's going to get to the top of my list, which usually means it's 2 to 3 weeks out. But I will report back and let you know how that goes because I would love to be able to start using some of that stuff. It solves some really needed UI issues for me, like improvements, just to be able to update something in real time if it changes somewhere else is definitely needed in our interface.
I found it super useful. Brendan, getting back to you, I've been curious, what got you guys started on the Rails Business Podcast? What was the thing that spurred the idea?
I've been listening to podcasts for a long, long time. Probably back to what we talked about earlier with Startup Podcast and Jason Calacanis and all that stuff. I don't remember all the ones I listened to, but long story short, Ryan and I met each other at Sin City Ruby, 2024? And kept in touch. And then, I don't know, it was like about this time last year, I think, right, Ryan? I think I might have texted you and was like, hey, have you ever thought about doing a podcast? And you're like, yep. We just kind of jumped in and started doing it. We had to kind of figure out what's the topic going to be. There's lots of podcasts out there. I feel like there's even more, or at least noticing more since we started our own. But it's not a competition in my mind. It's just like, let's have great guests on. I mean, we got to have you on, Chris. That's why we're on here now, partially, I think. It's just because it was awesome having you on. And so that's kind of the genesis of it. It was just something I thought about doing, didn't know how well it would work. I would encourage anyone to give it a shot. It's not that hard. Editing is the hardest part I've found. We don't have an editor yet, although I've had shout out to Tim Tilburg because he's an awesome guy that I also met at conferences, kept in touch with. Turned out he was an audio guy and he's helped me quite a bit. So now I can up my game a little bit with the audio editing of our podcast. But yeah, nice. I don't know, Ryan, if you have anything you want to add there. But
when we first started, we wanted to try to find a niche that wasn't already done. You guys have yours. We've got the Ruby AI, which I just discovered the other day. Now you've got the official Rails Foundation podcast and a whole slew of others. And we're like, all right, what could we carve out? And we're like, all right, what's the intersection of Rails and business? Sort of going back to the 37 signals stuff. I'd like to get more to that sort of style where it's not just about the coding, but it's about how it's applied within the greater context of running a business. Sometimes we do okay with that. Sometimes we get more technical and that's fine.
But I think the one thing I would add there is that I think without exception so far, all of our guests have been someone that owns their own business or their leadership or something in a business. So we have the intention of, and we generally do talk about the businesses, but yeah, inevitably it turns into questions about Stripe or whatever else too.
It's a business question.
It's exactly right. But we're just trying to fill a gap and find something interesting to talk about. And yeah, we'll see how it goes. I mean, I didn't realize we'd actually been doing this for a year already. So that's...
Well, I think officially we haven't, but we started recording like right after Christmas last year. So pretty close.
We're almost there. We're coming up. We'll have to do something fun for our 1-year anniversary.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like I relate to that a ton because I got into programming and it was just fun to build stuff for myself. But the second that you get users using your software and you're like, whoa, this actually matters for somebody. Like this changed their life. This is cool. And then you realize, yeah, I could just build a product myself. That's what everybody else did in, Y Combinator or whatever. Like they just went and made things and then charged money for it. And I can then do what I want. It's kind of one of the things that I think 37 Signals did so well is like, yeah, run the business the way you want to do it. Like you don't have to have investors. You don't have to have people telling you what to do all the time. You can build your company for you and what fits you the most. And yes, it will be a struggle no matter what, but like you don't have to make $100 billion. You can just make 100,000 and that's totally cool too. Maybe it's a little bit more expensive for you not to have a job because you've got to pay for health insurance and whatever else out of pocket. But that to me was kind of like, wait a minute, if I get a job as a developer, I can only do the stuff I'm assigned for the most part. They're going to fire me if I don't.
Yep.
But I am also like capped. I can't earn anything more than whatever my salary is. And I had grown up with my parents doing woodworking on the side. And when I was a kid, I'd have a job, detasseled corn, pushed carts to the grocery store or whatever. But if I wanted to like buy a video game or something, they would just be like, yeah, you can't use the money you take home from your job. Go do some extra work. And I'd help them out and they'd give me $100 for like cleaning out the garage or whatever it is, like doing stuff on the side or fixing somebody's printer or something. And they were like, you can spend that on whatever you want. Cause it's like the rest of the money needs to go to your college savings. And I was like, okay, that's fine. But that just gave me the like insight that, yeah, you know what? You can go earn as much as you want. You just have to make sure you're doing useful stuff for people that they're willing to pay you for. And if you want to make $1 million, you could probably figure it out eventually. It's not going to be easy, but you're not limited in that way. And that was like really good to learn at a young age where I realized going through college, like, I don't want to go work at Google because yeah, they do pay you well there, but you'll be a lot more constrained. You won't necessarily get to do stuff that is what you find interesting or fun. So that to me has been partly why Rails was so attractive because kind of started around entrepreneurship, but the business of software is really what makes it the most fun for me because I don't think I'd have fun just writing code every day without interacting with users and thinking about like, how are people going to use this in their company or whatever? It wouldn't be as deep of a challenge, I feel like.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, I've never owned my own business, especially now with AI. And like this year, I've been diving into it a lot more to just leverage it as much as possible. I've been releasing apps and none of it has been customer facing yet. But as I already mentioned, I just bought Jumpstart Pro because I have an idea that I want to build and I want to try. And it's like, that's something I've always wanted to do. And who knows if it'll be successful. And it's going to be a side project for a long time. But everything you just listed there is like the reasons why I want to try it because it becomes a full-time thing or even just a really good side income. And I'm getting to work on the things I want. That's awesome. That'd be great.
When I started Go Rails, I very clearly remember like making the first $100 and I was like, that's cool. And then you get to $1,000 a month and you're like, wait a minute, I could eat, this pays for lunch every day. Like I could go eat Chipotle every day and it's covered or whatever. That was weird because you're like, that's not that far from paying rent every single month. And then you're like, well, then all my expenses are just like food and whatever, insurance and gas and, and then you start like chipping away at all of your life expenses. And then at some point you're like, at the end of the month, I have more money than all of my expenses. This is cool. Like which you would have gotten at a job, hopefully, but you also had all the free time to like choose what you want to do. And yet that's not totally true because you have to do work that people are willing to pay you for, but at least you get to choose.
You get to choose the work. right? Like
Yeah.
if you end up building something and you end up working with people that you don't want to be working with, you have the choice to stop,
Yeah.
right?
Which
or pivot,
normally
or do
you do
something
not.
different, right? Like it's much harder when it's not your company, right? Like, you
Yeah.
can leave your job, but that's different than saying, hey, all right, I want to serve a different customer set. And I can do that if I reposition how I think about my business. So much more flexibility.
Yeah. I'm curious. Maybe you're not ready to share yet, but I want to hear about your business idea at some point.
Why don't we do a check back on that? Because
Yeah.
I'm not the only party involved, so I'm not at liberty yet to say too much. But ideally, it'll go well, and hopefully, we'll have something here soon. I'll check back in with you.
Cool. That's been super fun with like just Jumpstart being one of those. And this you'll probably figure out as you're building stuff too. Is like somebody said the term like sell your sawdust. Like maybe you're making furniture.
I think 37 Signals guys, I remember them talking about, it might have been them too or somebody else, but I remember them specifically saying like, sell your byproduct is I think the way but sawdust was their example, I think. So.
Yeah. And it's wild because you think about like all the sheathing on your home, like the panels of plywood and stuff, like OSB is just trash from other processes and stuff. They just put a lot of glue or resin in it. And it's like, now it's a thing you buy and you pay a lot of money for it.
Right.
It's cool because like that's how Jumpstart ended up was, well, if I need this for myself so that our apps have consistency to them because I cannot maintain 4 totally separate code bases.
Right.
If there's a bug in Pay, I fix it once now and all my apps are updated. That's really helpful. But it was basically the same thing. It was like sell your sawdust. And turns out that actually was something appealing to a ton of people that I had no idea. I just did it for myself. And I was like, I might as well sell this just in case.
Yeah.
If I sold nothing, it didn't matter. I still got a ton of benefit from it. But as it turns out, that was like a really great idea. And I had only realized that seeing like, there was a Reddit post of Taylor Otwell saying like, yeah, I made $1 million from selling Laravel Spark. And that was like basically their little payments thing back. It's different today, I think, but it was just like a Stripe integration and accounts or something. And $100 and he had made $1 million selling that. And I was like, dang, even if I made $1,000, this would be cool. You
get your lunch paid for, right?
Yeah. So that's definitely something that I think when you have an idea of something you want to build, being able to keep your mind open as you build it and think about like, oh, this is so frustrating because I want to do this thing, but I can't build it because this is painful.
Yep.
That actually might be the real idea there, the painful thing. But a lot of people will just like push through that and ignore that feeling because they're so focused on this is what I'm trying to build.
Right.
And yet that pain point could have been your Stripe payments. Why is it so hard to accept a credit card on the internet and you build Stripe, And so I would say some advice there for people is anything you find frustrating, where you're like, why is this so hard? Take a step back in that moment. If you can recognize that feeling, like there's something there. It may not be worth pursuing or may not be something you're interested in pursuing, but any frustrating piece is something that is an opportunity for somebody. So
I would totally agree and just like follow up with that even just starting the podcast, I've found so many like problems and things that end up I don't want to solve, but everything you just described there again, it's like, yeah, I'm feeling that. And so now when I build like these little apps, a lot of it is just like, okay, let's just do something and then maybe something else will come out of it, right? Because most of these apps I'm building are like little personal things. I know I'm never going to sell it, but maybe I'll run into a problem that's like, oh, this is bigger, just like you were talking about. Totally worth doing.
The idea of starting a podcast and then feeling the frustrations of like hosting the podcast and transcribing it and editing it and whatever, like those will give you $1 million ideas because you'll try Buzzsprout and Transistor and whatever. And each one will have its own like rough edges for what you're trying to do. And you're like, why can't I just do this? I just want to click upload and have it published. Man, I don't know what's so hard about it sometimes. So you can get tunnel vision so easily. And then you stop and you're like, wait a minute, there's so many opportunities out there, But sometimes day to day, like if you're forcing yourself to try and think of a product idea, it's like, well, everything's already done.
Yep.
I can never come up with something. But once you start working on things, real problems, and like trying to run your own podcast, you start to realize, yeah, everything's kind of awful in some way or another.
Yeah, right. Yep.
I'd also say that just because somebody else is already doing it doesn't mean you can't have a successful business, right? Like it all comes down to execution. Now, there's obviously some things there's a first mover advantage, but for most products that I see, you can have a very successful business even if you don't have huge market share, right? Like you said, like,
Yeah.
cover your expenses and a little bit more, have the freedom of lifestyle choice. And that's okay too, right?
Yeah. There was a thread just the other day on X that was like, or it was Justin Welsh, I think, who's a famous, I don't remember, designer. He's got a bunch of courses and makes millions or whatever. But somebody had said that, oh, you've got a lifestyle business, as if it was such a negative. And it's like, yeah, my lifestyle is I make a couple million a year, get to do whatever I want, spend my time with my family and kids and whatever. Yeah, so negative.
Yeah, I would take that lifestyle business immediately.
Yeah. And of course, it's from all these people who are not making anywhere near that. Like, think that, yeah, you got to raise funding or whatever. I don't know. Anything else you guys want to chat about?
I just want to shout out to Jim Remzik and Exo Ruby. I went to the Chicago one. It's been a few months, but I've known Jim for a long time. I can give Jim credit for everything he's done for me and the community. He's a great, great guy. But it was a really cool day. To me, it felt like a longer meetup in a lot of ways. It was a conference, but it was also like a meetup because it was smaller, which was great because I got to talk to a lot of people, including Jim, of course. But yeah, no, so shout out. I think he might be done. I think you just talked to him, Chris. Is he done now, right now, but he's going to do more? Is that what it is?
I believe that's the plan. He was in Boston in the end of October and was coming back through St. Louis on his way back home. And we got to chat at a coffee shop for a while. And sounds like things went well. He did not pick something easy to do. Like the amount of miles he drove around the country and the amount of people and marketing to do that for all these different locations. This is not, Exo Ruby was a day here, and a day there, and a day there, and a day there. Like getting the word out across all those different locations is wild. So what a challenge he bit off. But yeah, it sounds like it was a blast. There were none close to me and I was having a baby, so I couldn't anyways, but I was going to try and get up to Chicago. But next time, and I think there's a plan to have one in Kansas City or something. So that's real close for me to get to. But
that's not too bad for me either.
It went well.
I only went to the one. It was great. I would go a little bit further. Like Chicago was easy for me, but Jim's done Madison Ruby for so long and I've been to several of those. And this was like such a smaller thing, but not easier. I don't want to make it sound like it was like simple for him because I could tell he was a little stressed.
It's hard enough organizing something in the city you live in, but then trying to do that all over, got to be a nightmare. Yeah, I was going to say, like, those are small. You have the opportunity to talk to everybody rather than brief conversations with a whole bunch of people. You can actually hang out with them for hours and make some deeper connections, which I like a lot, especially tend to be a little bit of a celebrity at conferences these days. So it's a lot of short conversations, but I miss the small events because, we go talk in the afternoon, then we go have dinner, then we have drinks, and then head to bed or whatever. But like those after hours hangouts are like where all the friendships are made. So these are really good places to go for that.
And one thing I'll even add. So I went to a RubyConf in Chicago last year. And I remember seeing you. I decided not to go up to you only because I figured you were getting so many people. I was like, I'll leave Chris alone. I'll give him a little bit of time by himself. But I did meet a lot of other people. And I kind of regret it now. I actually wish I had gone up and at least said hi. And I definitely will, next time we see each other in person.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely do. I have to sometimes I'll see people and we'll lock eyes and they're like nervous about interrupting or something. I'm like, Just come on over, come say hi, join the group, whatever. Because usually, even worst case, I get to connect more people together that way, which is nice. And like,
Yep.
I think that is helpful too. As I remember going to my first conferences, just being awkward. I have nothing of value to contribute to this because I'm brand new. I never felt like I could jump into a random conversation or whatever. And now it's like, yeah, take your time, pull those people in, ask them what they're up to and whatever, and make sure they feel welcome. I miss those. There were like before COVID, there was so many little 100-person or less little meetups around the country, and feel like they're starting to come back, which is great.
Yeah, I'm hoping there'll be more for sure.
I'm hoping that there's a follow-up of sorts to Sin City Ruby. Hopefully Jason will put something on.
He mentioned it when he was on our podcast, so we'll see. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's been a few months. I haven't asked him lately, but I feel like he'll do something.
Yeah, I do too. We can come up to Michigan.
Exactly.
Everyone doesn't have to go to Vegas. That's a lot of...
Right.
That's got to be very similar to Jim with organizing things in other states. So,
yeah.
Convenient to fly into, but I barely left the hotel or the block around the hotel. So like, what
Same
difference
here.
does it make?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's Vegas. It's like the casinos and stuff are huge. So it's like they don't want you to leave anyways.
Right.
No. Nope.
Well, cool. Andrew took off. So we didn't get to say goodbye to him, but bye, Andrew. You guys want to share where people can find you on the internet?
Yeah, I'll go first. Railsbusiness.com is where the podcast is. You can find me on X at Brendan WB. Yeah, I think that's right. I'll give it to you for sure, but those are the places I'm at mostly right now.
Railsbusiness.com for the podcast. And if you want to connect with me, LinkedIn's probably the best, but if you go to frisch.fyi, Frisch, my last name, all my socials and everything else is on there, and you can jump off from that point.
Well, it was good hanging out. I had fun on your podcast. Maybe we can share audiences when you're on Remote Ruby and stuff. And then hopefully soon we'll get to hang out in person.
Yeah,
Looking forward to that.
Looking forward to that. And thanks for having us on here.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Chris. And Andrew.
Alrighty. Yes. Alrighty. I will talk to you guys later.
All right, see ya.